Na madrugada de 31 de agosto de 1997, Diana, a princesa de Gales, passeava de carro pelo centro de Paris. Apesar de seus laços oficiais com a casa de Windsor terem sido cortados, Diana ainda era a estrela mais brilhante da família real. Quando se casou com o príncipe Charles em 1981, Diana transformou a imagem da monarquia da noite para o dia. Nos anos seguintes, ela se tornou uma embaixatriz exemplar da família real. Mas o fracasso desastroso do casamento do século teve seu preço. Depois de 15 anos de mágoas e hostilidades, ela se tornou um fardo pesado demais para a família real.
Policemen clear the way for the princess this evening as she leaves a London hotel. £17 million richer after her divorce deal.
O príncipe Charles tentou minimizar um dos piores momentos da história da sua família divorciando-se de Diana.
In the last few moments, the Press Association has reported that Diana, Princess of Wales, has died.
Mas mesmo morta, a princesa se tornou um problema ainda maior, provocando uma terrível disputa familiar e uma danosa batalha pública pelo seu legado.
We as a family are deeply proud of what she did during her lifetime.
E uma série de eventos ainda mais sombrios estava por vir. Por escrito, em fita ou em vídeo, a princesa deixou um legado amargo de escândalos e conspirações que perseguiria o príncipe Charles e mergulharia a família real numa crise sem precedentes.
I won't go quietly, that's the problem. I'll fight till the end.
My guess is that we are hearing the words of an unhappy, lonely, bitter lady.
The royal family certainly didn't anticipate the Diana phenomenon. If they just embraced Diana a little more, gave her a little more, she would not have come back to haunt them so often.
De setembro de 1997, o funeral de Diana, a princesa de Gales. Quando Diana foi enterrada na propriedade da família, seu irmão teria substituído o estandarte real do caixão pela bandeira com o brasão da família Spencer, declarando: agora ela é uma Spencer. A batalha pelo legado de Diana estava apenas começando. Poucos dias depois da morte repentina da ex-mulher, o príncipe Charles ordenou que os aposentos de Diana no Palácio de Kensington fossem trancados. Mas era tarde demais. A família de Diana já havia entrado nos aposentos e iniciado a terrível tarefa de separar seus pertences pessoais.
I think the Spencers felt they had to do something. Diana's relatives moved pretty swiftly to reclaim her possessions and many other aspects of her memory as soon as they could. If the royal family weren't going to take responsibility for the future of Diana's name, then it was their responsibility.
Lady Sarah McCordale, irmã mais velha de Diana, assumiu o importante papel de responsável pelo espólio da irmã. A mãe de Diana, Frances Shanquid, quase não viu a filha nos últimos anos de sua vida. Ela não aprovava os namorados de Diana. Agora, a família estava unida pelo desejo de proteger o nome da família Spencer. Mas a família de Diana não estava sozinha nos aposentos dela. Atento a todos os movimentos estava o ex-mordomo de Diana, Paul Burrow. Burrow olhava ansioso enquanto os Spencer esquadrinhavam o mundo particular de Diana. E no escritório dela, eles encontraram algo extraordinário. Uma caixa contendo os segredos mais bem guardados de Diana. Eles tropeçaram em uma bomba relógio que logo explodiria dentro da família real. 16 anos antes, no casamento real de 1981, parecia que a dinastia Windsor havia recrutado a candidata perfeita para perpetuar a linhagem real. Na teoria, a criação e a reputação impecável de Diana Spencer fariam dela uma esposa admirável para o futuro rei Charles. Mas a jovem que eles acolheram logo traria problemas para a família real.
I think when Diana went into her marriage, there was a determination to do the right thing. But she was wounded from the very start by the conscious knowledge that Camilla was ever present, that she wasn't going to go away. The moment that she saw that Charles still was clinging on to his relationship with Camilla, she collapsed, she folded up, and that happened on her honeymoon. From that day on, suspicion ruled her mind and started to eat away at her.
Diana começou a remoer as decepções do casamento e não tinha com quem desabafar em sua nova família.
Diana felt that she had no one to turn to in the royal family. I think it was in the darkness of the night when she was on her own that she began to bring all these problems forward all the time, and this would get her into a downward spiral. It used to explode in her, and she said to me one day, you know, I cry a lot, but I feel always so much better after I've cried. And she said, and Charles hates that.
Isolada e ressentida no início dos anos 90, Diana secretamente começou a registrar seus pensamentos mais íntimos em fitas.
Nobody seemed to be on her side, and in those circumstances, I think you do start to learn how to protect yourself, and if that means that you then have to attack others by whatever means, then so be it.
Diana começou a criar um legado de bombas relógio que explodiria anos depois, revelando ao público como era seu casamento com Charles.
My husband made me feel so inadequate in every possible way. Each time I came up for air, he pushed me down again. I just felt so desperate, and I was crying my eyes out. And he said, I'm not going to listen. You're always doing this to me. He said, I'm going riding now. So I threw myself down the stairs. And when he came back, you know, it was just dismissal, total dismissal.
It'd be naive to think that Diana was this lovely, cuddly, warm, good-natured person that certainly was her public image. She was all of those things, but she was also an extremely shrewd and tough, independent royal operator.
Aos poucos, Diana foi ficando mais ousada. Em 1995, ela trocou as gravações particulares por um ataque público numa entrevista à TV, que deixou a imagem de Charles manchada por vários anos.
Because I know the character, I would think that the top job, as I call it, would bring enormous limitations to him. And I don't know whether he could adapt to that.
Com o casamento desmoronando, Diana parecia determinada a assegurar que seu marido jamais seria rei. Em 1996, o divórcio era inevitável. Enquanto os advogados negociavam um acordo, uma fofoca terrível chegou aos ouvidos de Diana. Um dos empregados do príncipe Charles teve um colapso nervoso e começou a espalhar histórias perturbadoras sobre a rotina dos serviçais da casa do príncipe de Gales. O nome dele era George Smith. Em meados de 1996, Diana decidiu fazer-lhe uma visita.
If what George Smith said to her was dynamite, then I could well understand why she might think it a good idea to have some sticks of dynamite in her cupboard, because at that time she was waiting to be divorced. She was waiting to hear what sort of future, if any, she was going to have as a royal person, and that obviously was going to have a bearing on other important aspects of her life, such as her contact with her children.
Depois de finalizado, Diana trancou o testemunho de George Smith numa caixa reservada a seus segredos mais bem guardados. Mas em vida, a princesa nunca chegou a usar as alegações bombásticas que gravou.
Diana's estate comprises cash, including her divorce settlement, jewelry, stocks and shares, and clothing.
Dias depois do enterro de Diana, em setembro de 1997, o legado da princesa já estava cercado de controvérsia. A morte dela provocou uma corrida comercial. Empresas brigavam para explorar a imagem da princesa. Os Spencer não estavam gostando nada daquilo. Com a irmã de Diana, Lady Sarah McCordale, na administração, o Diana Memorial Fund passou a controlar a exploração da imagem da princesa.
There were hundreds of ghastly products that were in some way or other rather degrading and undesirable. And they included Diana toilet seat covers and emergency kits in case you have a motor accident.
Just the kind of optimism of some of the companies that they're really quite extraordinary suggestions would be approved, I thought was amusing and in many ways, you know, admirable.
Amongst the more outlandish proposals that we received was one for a colonic irrigation kit in honor of the princess. That one was turned down.
Produto, porém, ganhou a aprovação do Memorial Fund. Logo, o nome de Diana estava nas prateleiras de todos os supermercados, causando outro protesto público.
Today, the trustees chose a tub of margarine as the first consumer product to bear the official logo. Some consumers felt it was a bit tacky.
Well, a tub of margarine? I really don't think it suits, you know, suitable for that.
I don't think it's very appropriate.
Inadvertently, it caused a lot of offence, that people felt that something as personal as the Diana signature was somehow being yoked to a deal which was to do with selling margarine. So people sort of thought, well, what on earth are they doing?
Tanto em morte quanto em vida, Diana despertou as mais intensas emoções nas pessoas que lidavam com ela. E agora havia mais um problema à espreita. Paul Burrell foi mordomo da princesa durante 11 anos. Depois da morte dela, a irmã de Diana deu a ele um emprego no Memorial Fund. Sob os holofotes da mídia, a carreira de Burrell prosperava e sua relação com Lady Sarah começou a ruir.
I think the problem and the sort of breakdown in their relationship began to emerge when Paul Burrell almost became the face of the fund. How dare a servant rise in profile to such a degree that he almost shadows the fund and its work? Everything Paul Burrell did was making headlines. Every interview he gave was Diana's rock. Somebody in the Spencer circle was heard to say, you know, I'm sick and tired of hearing this man describe himself as the rock. I think there was a belief that this rock could be crushed.
At this point, you're quite happy with your relationship with the fund?
I'm still employed by the fund, yes.
It wasn't quite what I asked you. Are you happy with your relationship with the fund?
I'm happy to be going back to my job tomorrow morning. I shall be at my desk on Monday morning, as usual. I'm very happy with that.
A confiança de Burrell não foi recompensada. Alguns dias depois, ele foi demitido. Os laços de Burrell com o Memorial Fund foram cortados definitivamente. Isolado da vida na corte real, Burrell apostou numa nova carreira em alto mar, entreter turistas com histórias sobre seus dias no palácio.
Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Burrell.
Mas ele não foi o único a enfrentar dificuldades depois da morte repentina de Diana. A família real também passava por uma das piores crises de sua história. Chocada com a reação do povo à morte de Diana, a realeza decidiu mudar seu estilo de monarquia. Determinada a fortalecer os laços com os súditos, a rainha se mostrava mais relaxada. O príncipe Charles foi ainda mais longe. Submeteu-se ao torturante circuito das celebridades.
It's very interesting to see how quickly he was ready to steal Diana's style of royalty immediately after she died, Within weeks, he was taking Prince Harry down to South Africa with the Spice Girls to meet Nelson Mandela. Now, you don't get a better photo opportunity than that. And it was exactly the sort of photo opportunity which Princess Diana would have relished.
I think it's obvious that both he and his advisors wanted to convey a more caring, compassionate figure, and there were public displays of affection between him and his sons. And all this was a conscious attempt to emulate the princess's example.
Parecia que Charles finalmente havia se libertado da sombra de Diana, mas o legado da princesa estava prestes a atormentá-lo novamente. Você vai ver daqui a pouco. A investigação da Scotland Yard sobre o ex-mordomo de Diana levou a família real de volta às manchetes. 3 anos depois da morte de Diana, detetives da Scotland Yard receberam um telefonema anônimo. A pessoa dizia que bens valiosos que haviam pertencido à princesa estavam à venda numa casa de leilões de Londres. Era o início de uma investigação que levaria a família real aos tribunais. Em 7 de novembro de 2000, os detetives visitaram a Spink & Son, no centro de Londres. Eles procuravam uma miniatura de barco incrustada de joias e avaliada em mais de $55 mil. Eles acharam um documento que provava que o barco havia sido retirado dos aposentos de Diana depois de sua morte por um empregado real. O nome dele era Harold Brown. Em princípio, Brown negou a acusação. Mas, sob interrogatório, ele mudou a sua história. Brown admitiu ter vendido a antiguidade, mas disse que agira sob a orientação do ex-mordomo de Diana, Paul Burrell. A Scotland Yard decidiu investigar a fundo as atividades de Burrell depois da morte da princesa. Os detetives passaram a acompanhar cada passo dele. O registro da segurança do palácio revelou que Burrell fora interpelado do lado de fora do palácio de Diana de madrugada. O policial Kevin Ward disse ter visto Burrell colocando malas de roupas e o que parecia ser uma caixa de madeira no porta-malas de seu carro.
Oh, just some bits and pieces that the family want me to look after.
Como era um membro confiável da equipe da princesa, Burrell recebeu permissão para deixar a propriedade com os objetos.
Olha, Bob. Good night.
A Scotland Yard chamou a irmã de Diana, Sarah, para discutir as descobertas de Burrell. E Lady Sarah disse aos policiais que tinha suas próprias preocupações com o ex-mordomo de Diana. Depois da morte de Diana, Lady Sarah achou uma caixa no escritório da princesa que continha seus segredos mais íntimos. Lady Sarah disse à polícia que entregara a caixa a Burrell e pedira que ele a enviasse à casa da família Spencer, mas a caixa nunca chegou lá. Às 6 da manhã do dia 18 de janeiro de 2001, Burrell recebeu a visita de uma equipe especial da Scotland Yard. Os detetives tinham um mandado de busca e a ordem de encontrar a caixa desaparecida.
As we understood it, the contents of the box were A. James Hewitt's signet ring. The second item in the box was some letters to the princess from the Duke of Edinburgh. And the third item was a tape or tapes, and that the contents of the tapes were potentially explosive. He was told by a senior police officer who went to his house in Farndon that if he had the box and handed it over, they'd go away.
Burrell negou estar com a caixa e a polícia não encontrou provas que confirmassem as suspeitas de Lady Sarah. Mas o que encontrou levaria a vida pessoal da família real de volta às manchetes dos jornais. A polícia confiscou mais de 300 objetos de propriedade de Diana e seus filhos, entre eles antiguidades, roupas de grife e inúmeras fotos de família. Apesar dos avanços na investigação sobre o mordomo de Diana, os Windsor tentavam esquecer o legado da princesa. 2002 foi o ano do jubileu de ouro da rainha. Era o teste crucial para saber se a família real havia conquistado o coração dos britânicos após a morte da princesa. Num toque brilhante de populismo ao estilo Diana, os portões do palácio foram abertos para a maior de todas as festas ao ar livre.
You saw 1 million people in the Mall, you saw street parties all over the country. Somehow the royal family had reasserted itself in a central position, the public's imagination.
5 anos após sua morte, a nuvem sombria de Diana parecia finalmente ter se dissipado. Mas atrás das portas do palácio havia uma nova bomba relógio armada e pronta para explodir.
Paul Burrell, the man Diana had called her rock, has been charged with stealing more than 300 items from her and her family.
The royal family must have been horrified when the whole Burrell story broke. Just when they thought it was safe to go walkabout again, Diana's dead, but her ghost lives on.
Na figura do mordomo Paul Burrell, Diana retornara para arruinar o ano do jubileu. Em meados de 2002, conversas secretas sobre o caso Burrell já se arrastavam havia meses. O príncipe Charles e o príncipe William reuniam-se com os advogados para discutir a terrível possibilidade de um julgamento.
The Prince of Wales could see that this was a juggernaut losing control. This was going to be a complete trawl over Diana's life, his life, and William's life. Charles didn't want to put the test of Paul Burrell's loyalty and closeness into the dock, because ultimately it would have meant putting his life in the dock.
Charles temia que seus filhos fossem chamados para testemunhar. E havia outros motivos para que Charles temesse o mordomo de Diana.
Mr. Burrell, did you ever remove a box from Kensington Palace?
It was so long ago, I removed a number of items.
This was a wooden box containing various documents.
Yes, I remember the box.
Did you ever remove it?
No.
A caixa contendo as gravações de Diana continuava desaparecida e Lady Sarah estava convencida de que ela estava com Burrell. Charles pediu que seus assessores evitassem o julgamento de todas as formas possíveis, mas os Spencer não pensavam assim.
The Spencers wanted the trial to go ahead because they felt that Paul Burrell had betrayed Diana. But you see, they really had nothing to lose. The royal family had everything to lose. Diana was the harbinger of secrets. She had this box which contained God knows what. Certainly we know a tape. And Charles knew of its existence. He must have known that had the trial gone ahead, this would have come out from the witness box. This was dynamite. They had an awful lot to lose.
Apesar dos pedidos de Charles, os Spencer, como testamenteiros de Diana, incentivaram a polícia a continuar investigando Burrell.
Paul Burrell.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was reminded that at breakfast this morning that today is a very special day.
During the course of the period before the trial, Paul Burrell attempted to keep his working life going. He wrote an extremely amusing book called Entertaining with Style, which had such wonderful vignettes in it as how to peel a banana with a knife and fork.
I am very proud and always humbled to think that my boss referred to me as her rock. She said it.
He used to speak on cruises on the QE2. By all accounts, the audience was boosted by a considerable percentage by people in dark glasses and Panama hats who transpired to be either police officers under the arduous duty of listening to what he said about entertaining with style, or journalists from tabloid newspapers who found it rather more difficult to disguise themselves, I gather. Paul Burrell certainly knew who was in the audience.
Em março de 2002, a polícia estava certa de que tinha um caso consistente contra o ex-mordomo. Depois de uma reunião no Palácio de St. James, Charles não teve escolha senão apoiar o desejo da família Spencer. Desde que foi preso em janeiro de 2001, Paul Burrell sempre alegou inocência. Ele declarou estar apenas protegendo o legado de Diana.
The moment that Paul Burrell became concerned, it was when he saw Francis Shankidd, wine in one hand, sat down the sofa, using Diana's shredder, shredding God knows what.
Logo depois da morte de sua patroa, Burrell havia sido obrigado a ficar olhando enquanto a mãe de Diana censurava cuidadosamente a correspondência pessoal da filha.
By her own estimation, she shredded 50 to 100 documents. The truth is, we'll never truly know what was shredded, why it was shredded. I think there is a point where the legacy of Diana, Paul Burrell felt, was being mishandled by her own family. He acted accordingly.
Burrell negou todas as acusações de roubo e alegou que não estava apenas protegendo o legado de Diana, mas que era a única pessoa que poderia protegê-lo. O palco estava armado para um caso dramático que revelaria alguns dos segredos mais bem guardados da princesa Diana. Em 14 de outubro de 2002, o julgamento do ex-mordomo foi iniciado na Corte número 1 do Tribunal Central de Londres. Se condenado, Burrell enfrentaria 5 anos de prisão e a desgraça pessoal.
I remember being with Paul on the night before. I think he could hardly believe that the next day he was going to take them steps into the Old Bailey. And I remember him visibly shaking at the prospect.
Para a família real, o espectro do mordomo no banco dos réus era mais uma terrível lembrança da mulher que lhe trouxera tantos problemas. Mas para o resto do país, o julgamento tinha todos os elementos de um grande espetáculo real.
It was ticket only. The public were queuing around the block just to go and see this, if you like, raw peep show. And there was this sort of eager air of expectation amongst the press. Here was their chance to open the door on Kensington Palace and have a peek in.
Às 10h30 da manhã do dia 14 de outubro, o promotor William Boyce abriu o caso para a acusação.
Item 3. One card from Mummy.
Ele começou listando cada um dos 310 itens que a polícia retirara da casa de Paul Burrell.
You'll see no less than 14 of these cards. I'm just going to read you 5 lines of one.
There were details, personal details coming out in court. The fact there were little notes that Diana had written to Prince William, for example, about my darling wombat. The details of what they were wearing in bed. It's actually quite embarrassing, particularly for Princes William and Harry to start reading this stuff.
My darling wombat. Wombat. The princess's private name for Prince William. My darling wombat, it was lovely to catch a kiss and a hug off you this morning, even though I would have loved to have run away with you. From Mummy.
The prosecution, in outlining their case, rather than going for a quality of an argument, they went for a quantity of an argument, and they wanted to throw as much mud at the wall as possible. You know, one man charged with theft doesn't sound good as one man charged with stealing 300 and odd items. And so you detail them one by one and build up this image of sheer treachery.
Another wombat card. And another. And another.
Só a lista dos itens levou mais de 8 horas para ser lida. Mas para Paul Burrell e seus ex-patrões, a família real, a aprovação estava apenas começando. Nos dias seguintes, cada um dos mais de 300 itens de suposta propriedade real foi detalhadamente examinado.
In the loft, 2 albums compiled by the princess when she was a teenager. She had written her name, Diana, on a Snoopy sticker on the inside cover. Lady Sarah saw albums of this kind ready for transport to the Spencer archive. Some arrived. These ended up in a loft in Cheshire.
The trial was a difficult one to call. Even the press were having bets on how this was going to go, and I think it was pretty much split all the way, 50-50. Some were saying that he would get off, and there were a lot of people thinking that there was damning evidence against Paul Burrell.
Photographs of the royal princes in a bar. This was a full letter, handwritten, from Diana, Princess of Wales, to John Major, a serving Prime Minister.
Depois de 6 dias apresentando evidências constrangedoras, a acusação fechou suas considerações iniciais. Agora era a vez de Paul Burrell contra-atacar, colocando a família de Diana no banco dos réus.
One aspect of the defence case was to compare the relationship between the Princess and Paul Burrell with the relationship between the Princess and her own family. Although the relationship was close, relations were sometimes strained between the Princess and her own Spencer family. And that may have affected the decision to keep this case going until trial. Is it right for the last 6 months of her life you and Diana did not have a single conversation?
4 months, I think, yes.
It's right, isn't it, that you and she had a falling out over particularly her choice of male companions?
There were ups and downs, but I would suggest it was normal family behaviour.
It is the case, isn't it, that your daughter regarded Mr. Burrell as, let's put it this way, a rock?
Yes, but no more than other people, including her family.
Acompanhe em instantes a defesa do ex-mordomo e a intrigante virada no julgamento que já durava mais de uma semana.
Not one of us expected the bombshell that was going to drop that day.
A defesa de Burrell expôs as brigas entre a princesa Diana e sua família. Agora ela tentava convencer o júri de que era Paul Burrell e não a família Spencer que desfrutava da plena confiança da princesa.
It was essential, for example, for the jury to be told that he was her rock to the extent that she relied upon him to drive in, conceal the male friends whom she was perfectly entitled to have. Paul Burrell carried out the task of getting them in and out. When she went out late at night, he went with her. He was present, for example, when she bundled a fur coat out of the window of the car to a homeless woman to keep her warm. He read her correspondence, he helped her to write her correspondence, and that was a very important picture to build up.
Mas pessoas que haviam trabalhado diretamente com a princesa diziam que não era bem assim.
People have said, I mean, most noticeably Paul Burrell himself, that he was her rock. I can only say that it wasn't a description I ever heard her give of him. There were lots of rocks in Diana's life. It rather depended which one she was relying on most at the time.
The chef was occasionally the rock. Every clockmaker, candlestick maker, juggler, whatever thespian within the court was a rock at some point. So I think actually Paul Burrell used that to promote his own celebrity status.
Day after day you came in and you sat in a chair beside the shredder and you shredded documents.
No, I shredded a very small number of a very large quantity of correspondence.
Paul Burrell was protecting, he said, Diana's memory and protecting her belongings, and particularly correspondence, from those who he said he thought might destroy them. And he saw that as destroying history.
A defesa de Burrell pediu que o júri acreditasse que ele agira em nome do dever e não da ganância ao remover os itens do Palácio de Kensington. E no 9º dia do julgamento, o momento mais temido pela família real havia chegado, o do depoimento de Paul Burrell.
Paul Burrell was very emotional. He looked as if he was close to tears, very choked. He was struggling, no question.
Era o momento que a família real mais temia. Paul Burrell estava a poucos passos do banco das testemunhas.
Burrell could have revealed all sorts of secrets. Diana, she had this box which contained, certainly we know, a tape. Imagine if he'd gone into the box. It would, I think, have dragged the royal family down to a position where they may have never recovered.
Mas a saga da princesa e do mordomo estava prestes a sofrer uma intrigante virada. Em 1º de novembro, dia em que Paul Burrell subiria ao banco das testemunhas, o juiz ordenou que o tribunal fosse esvaziado.
We didn't quite know what was going on. Who knows, it might have been some explosive new evidence. So I suggested to Mr. Burrell that we should go somewhere quiet. And so we walked down Old Bailey, and I said to Mr. Burrell, don't say anything at all.
All the press went on the wiser. Is this a new witness? Is Charles and William going to take the stand? Have they got some new dynamite evidence? We were speculating, and the air was thick with all this anticipation. Not one of us expected the bombshell that was going to drop that day.
Your Honour, in the light of the disclosure made by the Office of Her Majesty the Queen regarding a conversation between Her Majesty and the defendant, the prosecution now proposes to withdraw all charges against Paul Burrell.
O homem que se intitulava A Rocha de Diana estava livre.
I'm instructed to make a statement on behalf of Paul Burrell. He's happy and relieved to have been acquitted on all charges after the terrible ordeal of the last 21 months. He has always maintained his total innocence. Mr. Burrell remains deeply loyal to the late Diana, Princess of Wales, and to the Queen, who he served in a personal capacity for 10 years.
Burrell deixou o tribunal sem sequer uma mancha em seu caráter. As acusações contra Harold Brown também foram retiradas logo depois. Agora os holofotes estavam sobre a realeza. Na última hora, a rainha subitamente se lembrara de uma conversa com o ex-mordomo de Diana. A rainha se lembrara de que Burrell havia dito a ela que retiraria alguns documentos dos aposentos de Diana para guardá-los. E o príncipe Charles logo divulgou essa informação importantíssima.
I think the Prince of Wales's advisors went into some kind of overdrive in a desperate bid to try and bring that trial to a halt. I do think that the advisors of the Prince, and maybe some advisors of the Queen, did look very carefully at all possible contacts between Burrell and members of the royal family to find out if he'd ever indicated that he held goods. One of the Queen's close relations said to me that the Queen had almost, in a despairing voice, said, well, you know, frankly, that's the last time that I'm putting myself out for the Prince of Wales.
O fim do julgamento livrou o príncipe Charles de ter que testemunhar, mas o pior ainda estava por vir. Durante o julgamento, a defesa de Burrell havia provocado o tribunal com pistas sobre uma nova bomba-relógio de Diana. A caixa de segredos desaparecida e incluía fitas gravadas pela princesa. Agora os jornalistas estavam atrás dela.
This tape story, everyone started looking into as soon as it came out in the court. The whole story became a Pandora's box. Once it was open, the press became intrigued by the story, and it gathered its own momentum.
Em poucos dias, os segredos da caixa misteriosa levaram a imprensa ao empregado aposentado chamado George Smith. Smith havia sido membro da Guarda Real e veterano da Guerra dos Falklands. Ele foi recompensado por seus serviços, sendo nomeado criado pessoal de Charles. Mas a vida no lar do príncipe de Gales não havia lhe feito bem. Os problemas de George Smith começaram no início dos anos 90. Como empregado do príncipe Charles, ele se viu no meio de uma violenta disputa familiar.
We really were a house divided. I mean, how else do you describe a dispute in which the protagonists brief newspapers against each other? You didn't know who you could trust. A war isn't a bad word.
Com os últimos detalhes do acordo de divórcio sendo negociados, Diana começou a temer por seu futuro, principalmente por seus direitos de mãe.
By this stage, the forces within the palace were working against her. Diana was, in a sense, losing the battle over the children, and I think that she wanted to garner as much information and ammunition as she possibly could against that possibility.
Diana ficou sabendo que George Smith tinha uma história sensacional sobre a vida na casa do príncipe Charles. Percebendo uma oportunidade, Diana visitou Smith na clínica em que ele fazia tratamento contra a depressão.
Drank champagne, and then we moved on to the gin and tonic.
A história de Smith era justamente o que Diana queria. Alegações que poderiam manchar seriamente o bom nome de seu marido.
Yes, we were getting rather drunk. I think I fell asleep.
Smith disse que tinha sido violentado por um membro da equipe de Charles depois de uma noitada em 89.
I felt really ashamed.
O príncipe Charles tomou conhecimento das alegações de Smith em 1996, mas uma investigação interna concluiu que a história era falsa. 5 anos depois de sua morte, as intrigas de Diana tomaram uma proporção que ela jamais previra. O histórico de alcoolismo e problemas mentais de Smith pôs em dúvida a fidedignidade de sua história. Mesmo assim, as alegações de abuso sexual na casa de Charles e o pouco caso com que o príncipe tratou a reclamação de Smith geraram um escândalo público. A advogada de Charles, Fiona Shackleton, foi instruída a fazer com que o caso fosse esquecido. Smith recebeu $70 mil e foi discretamente removido de seu posto.
The Prince of Wales' reputation had been gradually been repaired after the low point in the aftermath of Princess Diana's death. This came as another huge blow.
Mas, para Charles, o pior estava por vir. Smith contou aos repórteres que havia visto o próprio príncipe fazendo sexo com um membro masculino de sua equipe. Os piores temores de Charles em relação às gravações de Diana estavam se concretizando. Os advogados reais partiram para o ataque.
I just want to make it entirely clear, even though I can't refer to the specifics of the allegation, that it's totally untrue and without a shred of substance.
The danger of the story, not whether or not it was true, but that the public might be prepared to believe that it might be true. I mean, what a leap. What a leap from this handsome, dashing young man that he once was, that the nation actually quite loved, the action man image that he had. And people are human, people are weak, and they say, no smoke without fire there.
Do túmulo, Diana mergulhou Charles na pior crise de sua carreira real.
In a sense, she continues to haunt everybody in a way that I don't think would have happened if she had been alive. The princess wanted to leave a record that was her own record. I don't think anybody really understood just how much stuff there was that she had archived, that there was that people had, over which now there was no control.
Para o príncipe Charles, o legado de Diana se transformara numa maldição e outros segredos da princesa ainda surgiriam para assombrar a família real. 3 dias depois da suspensão de seu julgamento, Paul Burrow vendeu sua história para um tabloide por $560 mil. O livro, lançado 1 ano depois, revelou ainda mais detalhes sobre os casos amorosos de Charles e Diana e a dolorosa separação do casal real. Mas ele guardou uma revelação ainda mais bombástica. Em 1997, depois de anos de desentendimentos com a família real, Diana estava cada vez mais isolada.
Towards the end of her life, she was surrounded by fewer and fewer people on whom she could really rely for sound advice. The proper advisors had disappeared one by one and were replaced by servants. And I think the sense of paranoia which characterized her in later years started to work.
Diana começou a ter pensamentos cada vez mais sombrios.
Her world shrank to the little kingdom of Kensington Palace. And she said to me, with a straight face, that somebody had taken a pot shot at her in Hyde Park.
She was writing notes to people saying, they're out to get me. She was having the floorboards pulled up at Kensington Palace because she believed she was being bugged.
When she pulled up the carpet and showed me some recently drilled holes in the floorboards, thereby, as she saw it, proving to me that the place was bugged, I actually pointed out to her the truth, which was that the fire alarm system had to be rewired.
Foi nessas condições que Diana entregou um estranho documento a Paul Burrell. Era uma carta escrita à mão que revelaria de forma extraordinária os temores da princesa e atolaria Charles em mais controvérsias.
My husband is planning an accident in my car. Brake failure to make the path clear for Charles to marry. I have been battered, bruised and abused mentally for 15 years now, but I will never surrender. I am strong inside, and maybe that is a problem for my enemies. Thank you, Charles, for putting me through such hell.
No dia 31 de agosto de 1997, Diana, a princesa de Gales, morreu num acidente de carro em Paris. Embora inadvertidamente, a forma como ela morreu lhe assegurou a desejada vingança da família que tanto a rejeitou.
Yesterday, Prince Charles was named in a letter written by Princess Diana in which she claimed he was planning an accident involving her car.
6 anos depois da morte da princesa, Paul Burrell divulgou a carta de Diana, mergulhando a família real em mais controvérsia.
The whole theory which I've been screaming for the last 5 years, that what happened to Dodi and Diana is absolute 100% murder.
There are a lot of people in England and all over the world that believe that Princess Diana was murdered.
There's something very disturbing about the fact that she predicted the way she would go. It is quite frightening and I think a chilling premonition. If anything happens to me, this will be my voice beyond the grave. And there are going to be questions. You know what? I don't think they'll ever be answered. It's going to go on, and it always will.
Na tentativa de acabar com as dúvidas sobre o que provocou o acidente de Diana em 2004, a Scotland Yard reabriu a investigação sobre a morte da princesa.
It is my job to report to the coroner every single aspect that has been investigated in terms of conspiracy theories, to actually ensure that there is a thorough investigation of every single aspect of that, and either prove or disprove those conspiracy theories.
Com a grande possibilidade de Charles ser chamado para depor, a vingança de Diana parece completa. A morte dela o envolveu numa teoria conspiratória que, por sua própria natureza, talvez nunca seja solucionada.
I don't think we're ever going to hear the end of Princess Diana. She is like a Marilyn Monroe figure, like a J.F. Kennedy figure, and there's no question that in 100 years' time, the death of Diana will always be a conspiracy. People will, even no matter how many reports Scotland Yard come back on, or the French investigators, they'll be saying, obviously something happened here. So the Diana question will always be unanswered.